it is important to us that we're not out there just doing free ideation work.
Hello and welcome to the Business of Architecture. I'm your host, Ryan Willard, and today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Robert Blaser, AIA, who serves as Principal and Design Practice Leader at Michael Graves Architecture and Design. His expertise lies in the art of placemaking, a pursuit which is very close to his heart, and with a fervent dedication to crafting user experiences, whether this is going to be in the realms of hospitality, entertainment, wellness, or the civic domain, Robert's creative fervor is boundless. He's an exemplar of imaginative collaboration, and he brings together a mosaic of stakeholders and owners, developers, operators, and fellow designers. And he has the ability to infuse each project with a narrative that resonates deeply with its context. His personal ethos holds that the user experience is an all-encompassing, spanning the grandeur of large-scale planning down to the most intimate nuances of interior design. In a previous life, Robert worked as an aerospace engineer prior to architecture, and he has an incredible ability to be able to really think big scale and look at the possibilities of what a project could be. It was a real pleasure to speak with Robert, and certainly to talk about the succession planning that's been happening at Michael Graves Architecture, obviously with the passing of Michael, and to understand how they've been nurturing leaders and talent, how they win work and how they market themselves, and whether they even still need to market themselves, being such a well-known brand, if you like, well-known architecture firm around the world. And we talk a lot about the fine art of balancing the business side, the financial side, with intelligent design, and how to understand the business agendas of clients. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Robert Blaser. It's time to announce this month's 200 Club. If you missed our episode on the 200 Club, listen to BOA episode 485 to learn more about this new initiative for benchmarking small firm performance. So, a big congratulations to Brad Hubble, Drew and Justine Tyndall, Mark Elster, Chris Brandon, Charles Scram, Irini Adams, Andrea Nemeczek, Kimberly Dokes, Lena Bola, Jos Bende, Chris Rawlings, Ryan Solars, Marina Rabina, Sven Levine, Judy and Larry Apel, David and Kristen Ware, and Yogesh Mistry. Keep the good work up, guys. This podcast is produced by Business of Architecture, a leading business consultancy for architects and design professionals. This episode is sponsored by Smart Practice, Business of Architecture's flagship program to help you structure your firm for freedom, fulfillment, and financial profit. If you want access for our free training on how to do this, please visit smartpracticemethod.com. Or if you want to speak directly to one of our advisors about how we might be able to help you, please follow the link in the information. Robert, welcome to the Business of Architecture. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Great to see you again.
Absolute pleasure to be speaking with you. Very excited to talk with you, as you are the principal and design leader of one of the kind of starchitect practices here on the east coast of the US, of the legendary Michael Graves. I know that you've been at the practice for a very long time, and of course the practice has got an incredible legacy of magnificent architectural work in quite a vast array of different sector types, and obviously the academic work and the thought work. And so, very interesting to be speaking with you and to have you on the show, and to hear a little bit about your career. So perhaps we could talk about that first, of just to give us a little bit of an outline of how did you become into the position that you're in now?
Okay, well, it's been quite a journey, and the journey didn't even begin with architecture. I began as an engineer in aerospace engineering for a number of years. 5 years with General Electric, then turned Martin Marietta, building satellites. I loved the nature of the work I did, but I had the design bug, a real itch. And actually, going prior, I had really toyed with the idea of going to graphic design school. I sort of chose what I thought might be, the more profitable or smarter approach at the time. But then, but as this, I couldn't shake that itch, and I really started to explore architecture. And I came to the architectural profession with a greater maturity. So I was really excited about it. So I did. I researched schools. I went to the University of Maryland, and I got my MArch, and then landed a job with Michael Graves, who was just such a humanist architect that I really felt like he connected with my soul in many ways. Just in terms of if I was doing things before that were very aspirational, in the aerospace world, I really wanted to do something that was a little more grounded, that connected with humanity, and that was more artful, and really got to embrace my creative talent. So again, really loving the work of this firm and connecting with Michael. I came here, and I've been here for 26 years, and the evolution of the firm has been incredible. I kind of got in sort of in the real heyday of Michael, and really where it was just he was a household name, not only in the architectural community but across all different scales, from product design to interiors to branding, and just because of the way he connected with people, and so I really enjoyed that. And then, but we've evolved over time to do just a number of different things, and we're really on course for kind of a new adventure post Michael. Very much in the wake of everything that Michael was about, yet by connecting with different acquisitions and in this growth mode, I think it's really interesting to invite other parties and bring in that diversity of thought to what we had been doing all along, and that kind of camaraderie, or that some of these new visions, and exploring that, I think, is a great launching point for sort of Michael Graves 2.0. In many respects.
How did you start preparing for the kind of succession, if you like? I mean, this is one of the a challenge for lots of architectural practices when you've had such a prolific or renowned. I mean, the brand, if you like. I mean, the business still carries the name, and then when there's the departure of that kind of figurehead, how does the business plan for that? Because obviously, it's going to happen at some point, and I'm assuming it wasn't nothing's happened by surprise or very suddenly, that there was a kind of plan in place.
It really is. How do you plan it? It's a great question. It was thrust upon us in many ways because Michael, 13 years prior to his passing, was paralyzed.
Right.
So he had that condition that eroded a portion of the spine, and obviously incredibly life-threatening. At the time, they didn't know if he would make it through the night. So in a way, that scare, or that because of that, we thought Michael would be there forever. We just didn't look at it any other way, naively. And so in a way, there was a little bit of a preparation, and that certainly changed the course of his career in many ways, because clearly it wasn't going to be like anything he had ever imagined. So that preparation was thrust upon us early, and at that time I was a little more junior in the firm, so I wasn't nip and tuck with every nuance of it. But I did see that evolution, and then you start to look at how do you build a legacy firm, and what is that legacy of Michael that we want to carry forward. And some firms might consider their legacy stylistic or about language, and they're just trying to continue that downstream of their founder. I don't see it that way. I think Michael, the way he connected with people, and the level of imagination that he brought to it, sort of defies wanting to keep any kind of stylistic legacy going. And really, I think we want to keep that imagination and that innovation going. So that's where, in that vein, and is kind of how we're carrying the firm. And that's a lot of what we do is the way we design experiences and the way we really craft uh, architecture in the realm of human engagement.
Hmm. In terms of how the office was structured, and after Michael kind of got sick, did the internal workings of the business start to change then, and different people were starting to take into leadership positions? How did the office start to
I think
shift
in many
itself
ways.
internally?
No, it's an interesting question because you look at there's multiple levels of succession. There's not
Mm.
only Michael, but succession in that sort of second generation of Michael. So
Yeah.
those are the older partners, and how do we succeed beyond them? So I do think, having been through that round of succession and looking at bringing up some of the younger stars in the firm and creating partnerships there. So I think looking toward that sort of the grandchildren of Michael in many ways, if you will, and how they might push the firm or move the firm forward. And not only that, but also we have an interesting strategy that is helping with our succession with our president, Joe Fury, not an architect, but he really looks at the business side of architecture and
Mhm.
growth. So in how we've led the firm into seeking acquisitions to build different sectors, to build strength, and looking for very compatible firms that are very much have embraced what we are, or who we are, and what we do, yet may have an expertise in a particular area and kind of the, again, it's that diversity of thought that I talk about, that they've looked at it or have had to tackle it maybe from more of a pounding the pavement type of approach to in relationship building, whereas we've always been in the legacy of this architect. So I
Yeah.
think taking those two approaches or visions and merging them has really crafted something special. So I think the way we create that legacy as a bigger team and with a broader palette, so to speak, I think
Hmm.
is tremendous. And I really love the opportunity. It's just phenomenally exciting.
So let's talk about it a little bit, because it is quite a sophisticated operational structure, organizational structure that you guys have got in the business. You've got Joseph is the president and CEO. Then you've got you've got two CEOs. Is that right? Ben is also in that
Oh,
kind of
Ben,
position
right, Ben on the products side,
on the
products
product
component.
side.
So
Okay,
there's
so right.
separate and connected.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And then then there's quite a large leadership team, and that even includes a CFO partner as well, right?
Yes, yes.
Got it. Okay. And so how long has that structure existed for? And what's the scale of the practice at the moment? How many people are you in total?
Now we are around 150. It seems to grow daily, so I'd have to fact check on that. But including all of the acquisitions. If we call us sort of the parent office here in Princeton,
Hmm.
we're about we hover around 40 people here in Princeton, and we also have what I would call one of my partners is down in DC, but he's sort of the Princeton office of that parent office. So together, yeah, we were around 40.
Got it. Great. And how would you describe your role, and also in comparison to, say, the into Joseph's role, for example?
Well, Joe, very much. I think we're quite compatible. I think he's excited about growth, about how do we target other sectors or build our strength, and I'm in this role where more about brand and
Hmm.
how do we craft how we design, how we engage with clientele. So I'm sort of uh, taking a lot of charge in the messaging, the legacy from a design component, where
Hmm.
he's looking at it from more the business and broader sector leadership type of positioning, which is great because it's freeing, it's liberating. If I
Yes.
were tied or handcuffed by those constraints more, it would sort of take my eyes off the road for design. And
Mhm.
and likewise, if he got involved in the nuances of the day to day, he wouldn't have his eyes on the bigger pieces and things like that. And it's compatible. The conversations we have are very interesting because he sees where I may be going, and certainly and the other partners may be going with their successes, and how do we bolster that? So he's
Got
out
it.
there looking for ways to strengthen, our position, say hospitality. Now that we're really emerging on a broader scene with that, for example, or be it school design or you name it.
Mhm.
I think it's really the compatibility really laying almost the differences between us make us more complementary. Let's put it that way.
So you're able to maintain kind of direct involvement in projects and have your, kind of guiding eye and expertise on them, and also
Right,
kind of make sure that they're being delivered within the brand of the
right,
design brand of the business. Whereas he's
right,
much more high level in terms of strategic, of
right,
like, here's where we're going to go after work and win
right.
work. And
Absolutely. I get to live in that seller doer role
yes,
well, so, as opposed to just that the sales road where you're just on a role where you're just on the road trying to bring the work in, but then you're detached from it. I very much like the client engagement and really helping to capture their voice and share their story. So you really have to be in a design role, I think, to deliver in that manner.
yeah. Well, I think it's always interesting when I kind of talk to the slightly larger architectural practices, how they end up structuring this leadership team, how decisions get made, the importance for a partner to have competencies in being able to win work, actually still be able to do work, and to
Mm,
be able to understand how to support the work, i.e., in terms of finance and HR and processes and systems. Obviously, when we get to a practice of you guys' size, then you can obviously have partners who have more of a specialism in one of those core competencies, and it is still important, to have architects involved in the leadership, because we can go very pure business. On a smaller
right,
business, for example, we're always trying to get people to get out of architecture, if you like, to
right.
focus on the business and to
Mm,
wear the business hat. So your career is really interesting because you're still straddling both of those domains, and you're still able to be in the strategic side of the business and also on the design side.
right. Very much. And I actually consider, how we craft our firm is a design project in itself too. So I
Mm.
find a lot of interest in how we may evolve, make our story part of the story of architecture in many ways.
Yeah. And for you, how would you describe your main kind of responsibilities in the practice?
I think sort of my niche has really been involved in what I call creating experiential design. And you and I chatted about that earlier. But the idea of what are your differentiators as a firm, or
Hmm.
what are our differentiators studio to studio within our firm, and so in terms of how we might parse out work from one group to another. So really, what I've been trying to craft is keying off the multifaceted design approach that this firm has always had, and inviting even non-architects to the equation when we're trying to, um, you know, create a project to bond with a client. So, we've got, I've started to leverage, our graphic design and branding people with visual artists, with interior designers and architects alike. And I do it across generations. So I like the idea of bringing diversity of thought generationally as well,
Hmm.
among all the other different nuances and things like that that can really breed innovation. So I think really creating this uh, design, pre-design effort about storytelling and about crafting experiences um, is really kind of selling point or a point of departure or differentiation for myself that I see is part of my personality,
Hmm.
but also something that's really been resonating out, uh, outside. And often I'm consulted, across all the different acquisitions to sort of maybe pitch in and craft some of that storytelling, some of that experiential design into some of these other sectors that may have approached it more from the framework of you got a tight schedule, you got to start right away and begin delivery here. And I kind of my approach is a little bit about taking a step back, looking at this pre-design effort, and really developing a bond and really talk about not just what are we doing here, but why are we doing it, and trying to bring that essence to design. That's a lot of where I'm kind of building a little bit of a popularity, you might say, both within and in the client realm, and so that's sort of the approach I've had with a lot of success lately. It's been actually an exciting path.
Amazing. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the acquisitions that you guys have made, and how do they come about? How do you identify which businesses to acquire? Why was that considered a kind of a good way of growing the practice versus the more traditional architectural ways of growing a practice, if you like?
Right.
There's a lot of risk involved in doing that. It's also there's a lot of reward.
There 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 is risk, and I think and Joe would be the one to talk to about the certain metrics out there and that broader business plan from a financial success perspective. But we look for people who are for firms that are very compatible, that we bond
Hmm.
with. So a lot of the approaches is meeting with everyone, and they're going to have concerns on their side. We're going to have concerns on our side. How do we bond? How do we complement one another? Uh, I love it. Those are the conversations that I love to be, you know, centered on. I just think, that bond is key, and I do think, a lot of them right off the bat worry about do they have to drink the Kool Aid, and are we, are we going to impose postmodernism on that, a design palette or anything like that that may have been, the language of, Michael's heyday, so to speak, and
Hmm.
it's very much a retinal burn in terms of what that is because people studied it in school. Well, particularly when you're talking about firm partners, they're of that age that knew Michael's work, I should say, very
Hmm.
well. So, are they going to be steamrolled or anything like that from design? And I say just the opposite. It's really what we're trying to do is we're an innovative firm. We're trying to bring you in as a different culture.
Hmm.
How does that culture even disrupt what we do? In many ways, just as long as it disrupts in a complementary way that helps us create better design.
Hmm.
So so I look for that and that level of engagement. I think other practical scenarios are how strong are they in a particular sector and how much work do we see coming our way in that sector and how do we strengthen that. That's so on the practical side is how are we crafting this. We don't want just because we fall in love with many who work in a particular realm do we want to be lopsided in that way? We really, a lot of this is a balancing act. So,
Hmm.
and we've had great success beyond what I could imagine, because I think we give each other a new tool in our toolkit. You
Yeah,
know, uh, Go ahead.
I can imagine it being, from the firm being acquired. Like you just highlighted the kind of concerns that they might have
Mhm.
about it being a culture fit. Are we going to be
Right.
imposed on? And then also from your side, the worries of like, well, we're acquiring this business for they've got certain sector expertise perhaps, or they've got a whole load of talent that's been identified, or perhaps there's been a
Mhm.
a relationship with the partners previously, or is it how do you test this first before making the acquisition? Is there a dating period that happens, or are there collaborations that happen
Hmm.
first, or
Sometimes.
how long does it take?
Yeah, there have been times where we sort of yes, there has been like a dating period where maybe we're in conversation,
Hmm.
we see some compatibility, and maybe we go look into a project together or start to work together. I think that's we look for those opportunities. We're sort of engaged with people right now that could very much be of assistance to us. So maybe we have that dating period, if you will. But
Hmm.
more so, the dating period is really about design conversations and
Right.
the fun conversations in many respects, just to try and extract from each other what are your philosophies. Are we do we complement each other, or are we disparate, or and even disparate being good as a disruption, but are we disparate in a compatible way? Yeah.
Got it. Got it. In terms of the sorts of businesses that this has happened with, how have they typically been identified?
The, like, again, Joe, he goes out there, like some businesses are sort of shopping for their succession.
Hmm.
And so Joe discovers these. But what often happens is he'll discover maybe a firm, but then the firm knows a firm who's interested in the same thing. So a conversation with one may lead to a conversation with another. So
Hmm.
that often happens, I think. We so oftentimes we identify. I mean, an example is we're having a lot of success with some of our international hospitality work, and we
Hmm.
are really sensing that there's going to be a high demand for this and in big volume.
Hmm.
A lot of our Saudi Arabian work at Neom and other locations. So we might target a firm with a lot of strength in hospitality who can assist us. At least because while we've lived in concept and ideation mode, we're going to have to live in delivery mode as well.
Right.
And we have strength in that, but I think how do we make ourselves stronger to even scale better? So
Yeah.
the opportunity to really scale in areas where we're very talented
Hmm.
is comforting, and it's great. So I do think you know targeting along that perspective is something we do.
How do you guys typically win work these days, and how is that? How have you seen that changed in your career?
I guess once upon a time, for Michael, the phone just rang. And and it's a lovely way to do business development, I suppose, right? Take what you want.
Receive calls,
Uh,
yeah.
just receive calls. And so it's very different than that. And our approach now is more about relationship building. And if at first that made us nervous, I've actually grown to love that, because I think if you do it via relationship building, you're already one step into the process.
Hmm.
If you know you can bond with a particular client because you have via repeat work, you know what your road is in front of you. I think that's great. I do think what's interesting with the acquisitions, again, because they've had to develop business in a very different way. And so I do think their talent, and their talent is very much in relationship building. So I think what I've learned, what we as a firm have garnered from these acquisitions, have really helped us tackle it in that manner. But again, it's not. I do think there's still that element of name recognition, brand, that
Hmm.
does get the phone to ring or create those opportunities. But without Michael, it's not push button automatic anymore. So
Hmm.
it really is, we have to, bond and still connect. I do think, the other, um, the other sort of strategy I have personally in doing this is when we go out and we try to capture this work, is how do we do it beyond just handing stock qualifications and things like that.
Right.
So I think it's how do we storyboard it and
Hmm.
message it specifically to them without necessarily having to work out a building
Hmm.
or always solve every nuance of their project. What are they looking to do, and how can we capture the essence of that in our pitch, in unique ways. I think that's also been sort of a model that I've approached creatively, I think, in terms of how we storyboard who we are, not just the what we are.
Do you go to develop relationships before the clients need projects, or is it more, you're waiting for an RFP, or you're waiting for a competition entry, or you're waiting for somebody to be asking for architects to put ideas forward, or you're much more proactive in those relationships, actually, like, identifying sectors or captains of industry that you want to work with, and
Mm-hmm.
start to understand what their pain points are, or their problems are, and then kind of start being more creative, if you like, with the types of architectural consulting packages or services that you might be able to kind of
Mm-hmm.
offer before they even know that they need a project yet.
Well, that is interesting too. I think a couple of ways. I do know, again, with the acquisitions, they're very good at sort of the preemptive strike, if you will.
Right.
Knowing people and getting out there and trying to find opportunity in that manner. We still have some luxury of it's definitely about relationship building, but it sort of breeds other RFPs and things like that that come our way that we can respond to. But it's a little bit of a so there's some courtship. Does it happen? It can happen before you know of a project, or you're making a suggestion that may breed a new opportunity. It's an interesting question. Oftentimes, I can give an example. I think might be a good way too. Is because of a relationship we built with our friends out in Neom, they hired us to be a custodian or sort of a stewardship for their hospitality. So we reviewed a lot of their hospitality um, um, designs and things like that as a third party. But
Yeah.
in that, and by doing that, we've developed friendships and relationships, so they see how we think, that have given them ideas to craft things maybe in a different manner, and those opportunities come our way because we've already had that dialogue. So in doing so, we're helping them create opportunities, and often we're first in line to receive those opportunities. So I think that's an interesting approach. So more of a consultant role approach can really generate a lot of work. So I do enjoy that, but again, that's from the perspective of relationship building. So whether you
Yeah.
do it more preemptively or even in a tandem process, I think that's probably important, because they don't always, particularly on my side, they don't always know exactly what they want to do. In other words, if you're trying to design an experience or sort of craft their why, is often what I say,
Mhm.
why they do what they do, and all of a sudden you're taking what was a smaller effort or something like that, and it's growing because you found opportunity that they didn't know they
Mhm. Got it. Let's talk about Neom for a moment. Obviously, this has been a very highly publicized kind of endeavor around the world, and also, I mean, the complexity of it, and the fact that there's hundreds of other architects working on this project. How has this project been in? How long has this project been in the office for? How are you finding working alongside all these other architects? Is it going to happen? What are you allowed to say about it?
had. I'm allowed to say very little, other than that we've been involved, or at least I know I am in certain instances, and I got tread on that lightly in terms of any detail. But we have been involved for some time, since 2020, and it's just that it's so highly innovative and imaginative that I think it plays well to my approach, and so
Mhm.
I absolutely love it. I do think it's so engaging, and the best I could say is they really are taking charge, and it really is feeling real. And maybe
Mhm.
in many respects, I think what I can say is, if in 2020, when we were sort of defying gravity and being highly conceptual, floating buildings and things of that sort. It's gotten more grounded. And that's a testament to the fact that they're getting very real. I mean, they've got
Yeah.
I have not been out there. We're working more in Trojana in the mountain site, um,
Right.
but on the cusp of going out there. But it really is. They're really getting heavily involved in infrastructure moves and things like that. So I like that aspect because it's starting to feel more real and tangible.
How do you know when? I mean, I used to work at RSHP, Richard Rogers' practice in London years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that they used to have a problem with sometimes was being able to distinguish when a client was for real. So you'd often have people would see the brand of the practice and they'd want to, sometimes you have a very rich business person who wants to flex, if you like, for want of a better
Right.
word, and to kind of just play and have a star architect do some ideas. And that could be very unproductive for the practice because you could end up being led down a certain pathway where you're putting a lot of resource into a project that was never going to materialize.
Right.
Um, have you guys had similar sorts of things, and how do you distinguish? How do you tell that if it's going to be a project that you're going to say no to, or it's going to be a project that you're going to, go? When do you exercise caution? Because I could imagine something like Neom, just the whole idea of, this like a. I don't know if there wasn't even that concept of it before you were approached,
Right.
but it's on such a vast scale that it can almost be, certainly from a UK or US perspective, we don't normally have things
Yeah.
being built at that level, at that pace, that it can
Okay.
almost seem, is this real?
Yeah. Oh, there's definitely the element of is this real? But I'm probably the worst person at policing that process because I get wrapped into it. I get so excited. I want to do it absolutely. And I look at it as it's an opportunity. Not only that is even if that particular project doesn't become real, it's elements of it or what you learn from it or how you may to the ability that you're allowed to how you may take some of those elements and bring them to something else. But it is understandable that time you're doing anything highly conceptual, will it become brick and mortar? It's less likely. If a certain municipal project comes our way, we know for sure that they're ready to build it. So in this case, the hit rate on what actually gets built is lower than normal or can be. But you also, I don't look at it as necessarily the project being brick and mortar always. Sometimes you're crafting their brand, or
Right.
you're creating something exploratory that both they can use and you can use going forward. So I think there's more than just the beautiful paper project
Hmm.
in these efforts. Because I see them not only in other parts of the world, but even here, we've got some great clients who are very high-minded and looking for things that are very experiential. Um, um, and even if it's concept level, it helps them sell a strategy or an idea because what we do, it's not an ode to Michael Graves, to myself, or to even architecture. It's really we're trying to craft who they are. So
Hmm.
that's part of my shtick in a way is how do we invite the client voice into what we craft our brand, and that helps them maybe literally find investors or even brand themselves and or the possibility, and that possibility may manifest in some other project entirely, but you sort of that thought process has a lot of value. So
Mm.
I almost I almost shun nothing. But it's definitely I think if it's a paid effort and you're really a partner to these clients that are looking to do that, it's very much worthwhile. It just may never be photographed.
Well, that's interesting as well because not closing the door too early and keeping an open mind about the reality of these kinds of projects and being able to entertain them and actually take them very seriously and get actually help them develop. How do you then ensure that you get paid for that kind of work? Because now we're dealing with a world where there's a lot less tangibles involved. You're trying to help the client develop a lot of unknowns. How do you, as a business, price your services, or even kind of start to conceive of how you're going to be approaching it, and avoid, for example, spending months and months just getting lost in the design process? Or is that actually that we want to be able to do that, and we're actually quite good at being able to structure a fee and a service that the client sees as very valuable?
Well, we will always structure a fee going into it. I think, but buried within those fees is some level of partnership and understanding
Right.
that they're at risk. So I think that does happen, and it can be hard if something doesn't make it deep enough into the investment realm or anything like that. You know,
Hmm.
but it is important to us that we're not out there just doing free ideation work and such. There's we know what we bring to the table, and we know that value, even in crafting their brand, is useful, even if it doesn't again manifest into that particular project. So we're looking to do that, but there is also that partnership and that understanding and that excitement in trying to really be part of who they are. So there's that understanding. So in effect, it's often they get just a tremendous amount from us in terms of effort
Hmm.
within that how we package any kind of a fee structure there at the early phases. But yeah, it is a challenge, and you know it's one that Joe and I chat about often is how do we uh, craft these packages fairly amongst our clients and fair to ourselves.
Yeah. I think it's interesting actually that you're very intelligently positioning it as well as being a kind of service which is helping develop another company's brand
Mm.
and identity. And even if it doesn't realize into a actual completed project, that you as architects are developing brand and brand experience. I think that's actually a really
Mhm.
quite enlightened way of viewing what you do as architecture. How do you talk about that within the office?
I think, well, interesting. I do think, I guess a word I throw out a lot, actually internal to our office and even with our clients is voice, your voice. I do that relative to my design staff. We design as a conversation, but I think saying that we're trying to tell their story, we're trying to craft their voice is, if I'm answering the question well, is important to us to be something bigger than ourselves, to be something bigger than just architectural language and expression, right?
Mhm.
So I enjoy that. I think there's a need for that. So yes, how do we make them stronger? So sometimes what I do say is we're not. How do I put this? Um, we how do we make them? It's like our client isn't necessarily, or our project isn't necessarily the building. It's even the career or the messaging
Mm.
of that client. So it's again, it's not the brick and mortar. It's what are their pain points? What are they trying to develop, and how can we make that better? That's
Mhm.
um, important to me. And not only that, you develop that bond. Sometimes I call it sort of trying to develop this love relationship with a client that where you can go in and find other opportunity for them. And
Mm.
uh, so I very much like to help them. Often I say craft their why. I've had a number of sort of inspirations or people who who I've heard or listened to a TED talk or what have you that have inspired me. And one is Simon Sinek and his sort of the golden circle that he talks about, and the importance of why versus what.
Yes.
So we're not just serving what they do.
Hmm.
It's why they do it. And I think if I can capture that or help them craft that,
Hmm.
and get my staff or really I call my staff my partners to do the same. I think that's important to build upon. who they are in a way that helps them expand.
Hmm. I love that. I mean, such a valuable business investment, if you like,
Mm.
is any kind of exercise which is kind of strengthening the why and the purpose behind what you're doing,
Mm.
and obviously the architectural process is very kind of key to being able
Mm.
to drive that. It's not just again, it kind of points towards a larger reason for what you're doing as architects. There's not just sort of lifeless vessels that are being designed. They are
Exactly.
things that are bringing the business to life. They're things that are manifesting a philosophy of the why or the existence of why that company has been founded in the first place. Which just as an exercise that stays on paper, for example, is still massively valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Completely.
interesting. In terms of how you guys, let's say, on a more practical note, maintain profitability or track money inside of the practice, and how is money profit spoken about internally, and how do you mix it with design culture?
Hmm. We've evolved to make that message more clear to staff. So it's flown downstream quite a bit in our office. I think years ago it was kind of kept at the top, um, and not necessarily managed well. Like I said, if the phone kept ringing, we had a lot of work. It sort of just we were successful organically without much effort. But now we try to we get a lot more of our staff engaged in billables and cost structure for a particular
Hmm.
project. What's available? How are we going to be efficient? How can we serve this client that may only have so much to invest, for example, and do it in the best way possible within that parameter. So I think a lot of it, yeah, is really getting that uh, message or floating that message to the to downstream to the rest of the staff. I think our acquisitions have often lived in that realm better.
Hmm.
They've sort of had to. They didn't necessarily have the luxury of a heyday, so to speak, right? Like that Michael had. So they're very good at it. It's like one of those things where you want to be. It's how do you could do that to a point where it controls you or
Hmm.
paralyzes you in some ways. Where so I do think building flexibility in that, or making it more of an understanding than always necessarily. I literally like prison bars to any
Yeah.
project we're doing. I never wanted to become that. So how do you dose it? I think is a forever challenge. I think that's a conversation you and I can have, and my partners and I can have for a long time.
Hmm.
But it is important. It's to understand, it's the sustainability of what we do is dependent on how we are successful, financially as well as design talent wise.
I assume that projects are kind of quite closely monitored in terms of, what the budget plan is, and you have team members report back on with their timesheets, if you like, and
Mm-hmm.
and the CFO or the project managers themselves have got a close eye on, what the burn rate is of the money going through the project, and then obviously there's a kind of conversation of, okay, well, we're deliberately going to allow ourselves to spend more time on this part of the project to encourage design, if you like.
Right. And that's important. And I think that message has to be shared so that
Hmm.
everyone's in agreement. If you're going down the path where, okay, we're going to allocate some of this to development in the sector
Hmm.
or for qualifications, but, cautiously, I think that, because everyone has to be on board and has to mutually understand what that effort is to be successful. And, it can't be all of us doing that all of the time. So I do
Hmm.
think, and that's important. So how do you any of that flexibility? How do you distribute it equitably, across clients and sectors?
How do you make decisions as a leadership team?
Well, we meet frequently, and so I think it's sort of twofold. It's what we do within sort of within the walls here in Princeton and sort of our extension in Washington D.C. And to make sure we're all on the same page, and those are the very intimate conversations because we're very directly aligned. But we also do that relative to the acquisitions. So maybe, well, quite frequently also, we'll be in touch with them to make sure that we are on the same page, so to speak, and that we're all setting ourselves up for success. In my world, it's a little bit more about staff sharing and ideas, and even bouncing ideas off of one another. We're helping with business development efforts and proposals. But Joe and Sean, our CFO, are very are more engaged and would answer the question differently. I think they're very much on top of that, just to make sure that nobody is floundering. If they get the support they need to be successful financially, so we don't create black holes in the deepest realms of our other acquisitions and things like that. So definitely a high touch involvement, I think, on their side.
How do you identify the next generation of leaders? So it's interesting because you've gone through one kind of iteration or one phase of succession plan. It's kind of you've got an experience that lots of businesses never have. Now, when you're looking forward for developing future talent and future leaders, what do you look for? What does that process look like?
Oh, I think that's great. Honestly, what we call future leaders are leaders already. What I try to develop is while I've gotten to this point in my career where I could elect to live it up and have minions below me or what have you, it's really more about the collective thought. So I like to see the leadership rise, and these design conversations come from all groups. I think I like, you call it very interested in sort of merging wisdom with disruption. If I could be the wisdom, if I could be the conductor, and a lot of this, and they emerge as leaders and design leaders and bring that to the table. And then I'm getting voices from across gender, across age, across culture. That so it's like we lead together, but people will emerge and succeed that way. So I think it's somewhat organic in terms of how people take over. But it's important for me to create that opportunity and that path for them. So it does happen, and I see it happening very quickly. You wonder, you're like, okay, I've arrived, but that's not the end.
Yeah.
This has to continue to happen, and our story is only sustainable to the degree that other people carry it forward.
How does the business operate at the moment in terms of ownership? Are you looking at, is it all kind of owned by the group of partners, or is there, or is it more, are you looking at distributing it across the rest of the team? How does that structure and ownership structure work at the moment? And what do you foresee for the future?
I think, we're always entertaining ideas, to bring in partnerships and things like that. I know Joe does, and maybe if it's not just an immediate leap, in some cases it may be dosed in dosages. I think so, but we have that structure that's sort of Michael Gray's proper, or the hub, or basically the Princeton/DC office, and then the partnerships through acquisition, and that's really a better Joe conversation. But so I do think we're always entertaining unique or different, or how he structures them is again, he could explain that better, but it's kind of like eyes wide open. I think we get, and even some of our partnerships are unique. Well, it's not just other architectural design firms. We did acquire Parallax, which does a lot of Revit leadership, a very tech company that can make us a leader in that realm. So
Amazing.
they have a unique structure in terms of how they support us, as well as support firms, which are their other firms, which are their clientele. So that's unique. So a dodgy way of of kind of saying that we keep our eyes wide open. And in terms of the nuances, though, I think Joe would be able to answer that much better.
Brilliant, brilliant. And what are you hoping to see for the practice for the rest of the year for 2024?
An explosion in the best of all possible ways. I feel it in many ways. I see these opportunities coming. Not just not just internationally, but even within. I think we've got some really interesting opportunities. And maybe we grow exponentially. This year. I've got very high hopes. I feel like we had this grand idea. We've crafted this idea with experiential design, sort of in my studio. It's getting legs. It's resonating with our clientele. How we do this, how we are placemaking. Creating not only the project, but how do we make their project a destination? Concepts like that are making us quite popular. So I do think I see a lot of growth in some very interesting areas, specifically hospitality in my case, but across the firm, I think in a number of different sectors. I think there's a lot of excitement. We enjoy each other too. The leaders in the acquisitions and even and the partners here, we really enjoyed the dialogue we have, and that's, I think, a blessing. So it's kind of we're all along for a fun ride, I think.
Amazing. Brilliant. Well, Robert, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your career path, and really showing us what's going on inside of the practice. Absolutely fascinating to hear how you guys have grown and how you're planning for the future. So thank you so much.
Ryan, thank you so much. My pleasure.
And that's a wrap. And one more thing, if you haven't already, please do head on over to iTunes or Spotify and leave us a review. We'd love to read your name out here on the show, and we'd love to get your feedback, and we'd love to hear what it is that you'd like to see more of and what you love about the show already. This episode is sponsored by Smart Practice, Business of Architecture's flagship program to help you structure your firm for freedom, fulfillment, and financial profit. If you want access for our free training on how to do this, please visit smartpracticemethod.com. Or if you want to speak directly to one of our advisors about how we might be able to help you, please follow the link in the information. The views expressed on this show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract bond, or commitment except to help you be unstoppable.